Greetings. My name is Kelvin, and I'll be talking today about Genesis chapter 1 to Genesis chapter 3. So we'll be looking at these three chapters, and I'll be doing a study, interpret these chapters just based on what we have learned. And we need to understand that the opening chapters of Genesis introduce the creation narratives detailing God's formation of the universe, the earth, and life within a 6-day framework, culminating in the creation of humanity. Genesis 1 portrays a structure, ordered process, while Genesis 2 offers a more intimate account focusing on the creation of man and woman. Genesis 3 recounts the fall of both man and the woman, where humanity disobedience results in sin entering the world, altering the relationship between God, humans, and the creation. So, in my study today, we'll be trying to explain the Genesis creation narrative as understood from Moses' perspective, and how that creation story represents God as the sovereign creator whose orderly, purposefully creation establishes a foundation, theological framework for understanding humanity identity, purpose, and relationship with God and the cosmos. Now, when you think of the historical context of the book of Genesis, remember, tradition has it that this book was written by Moses. So when you look back at Moses' background in Egypt, you come to this realization that the ancient Israelite cosmology was influenced by the surrounding cultures, such as the Mesopotamian Enuma Elish and the Egyptian creation myth. These narratives often depicted a chaotic struggle among gods leading to creation. And in contrast, Genesis presents a monotheistic view where God effortlessly speaks creation into existence, emphasizing his sovereignty and intentionality. Victor P. Hamilton observes, the creation account in Genesis 1 is a deliberate polemic against the mythology of Israel's neighbors. It asserts a monotheistic faith in one God who creates by his word, not through struggle or violence. Genesis account also likely served as a counteract prevailing pagan myth, asserting distinctiveness of Israel's God. The narrative audience would have been ancient Israelites, reinforcing their covenantal identity and God's supreme authority. John Walton notes Genesis 1 to Genesis 3 function as a theological corrective to the surrounding polytheistic cultures, emphasizing Yahweh's exclusive sovereignty and the covenantal relationship with Israel. Now, within the Pentateuch, Genesis 1 to 3 establishes the foundation themes that resonate throughout, such as God's covenantal relationship with humanity and theological implication of sin and redemption. See God as the creator. The Hebrew verb for the word create is the word bara. And this word bara is used, or rather has been used exclusively for God's creative act, underscoring his unique role as the creator. The narrative emphasizes God's sovereignty and power through his spoken word, that is bringing forth creation from nothing, ex nihilo. Bruce Watke further explains the use of bara, the use of the Hebrew word bara, signifies a divine activity that brings forth a new reality, highlighting God's sovereign power to create ex nihilo. Number two, we also see orderly progression from the time God began creating the world. We see orderly progression. He creates one thing, then he moves to the next thing. The orderly progression of creation, moving from chaos to cosmos, reflects God's intentional design and purpose. The creation of humanity on the sixth day, as the climax of the process, highlights the special status of human in God's plan. Bill Arnold notes, and I quote, "The orderly sequence of creation days emphasizing the finality, purposefulness of God's creative work, culminating in the creation of humanity." And the other theme that we see that appears in Genesis 1 to 3 is God's rest. God's rest on the seventh day signifies the completion and the perfection of creation. Sabbath theological significance as a time for rest and worship reflect God's own patterns. In fact, the seventh day's rest signifies not only the completion of the creation, but also establishes a divine rhythm of work and rest that is the foundation for human existence. Let's look at this other theme that appears in these three chapters, which is the theme of humanity's relationship with God. And under this, we are looking at number one, the image of God. The image of God. The concept here is from this Hebrew word, imago Dei. Now, being created in the image of God, imago Dei in Hebrew, implies that humans are unique in reflecting God's attributes, such as rationality, morality, and rational capacity. This concept, which concept are we talking about? Imago Dei, created in the image of God. This concept establishes human dignity and intrinsic value of every person. Imago Dei, created in the image of God, establishes humanity's unique role in creation, reflecting God's attributes and serving as his representative on the earth. In fact, while Moses was writing the book of Genesis, his perspective of the image of God was from Pharaoh. Pharaoh was a representation of the Egyptian deity that gave life to all Egyptians. So, as representatives of God, as the image of God, we are his representative in this world. The other theme that appears, number two, is the theme of dominion mandate. Dominion mandate, ladies and gentlemen, is where humanity is tasked with stewarding creation. And this theme signifies a partnership with God in caring for and cultivating the earth that God gave it to man. This responsibility highlights the role of humans as God's representative on earth. John H. Walton observes, "The dominion mandate underscores humanity's responsibility to manage and care for creation and God's stewards, reflecting his rule and authority." End of quote. The other theme that appears here, the intimate relationship Intimate relationship, ladies and gentlemen, between humanity and God is further emphasized by God's personal interaction in creating Adam from the dust and breathing life into him. This act portrayed a close covenantal relationship between God and man. The act of God breathing life into Adam signifies, ladies and gentlemen, a unique and intimate relationship between the Creator and the humanity. It emphasizes the covenant aspect of this relationship. Okay? Another theme that I want us to look at, theme particularly appears in chapter 3, is the fall of man and the consequences of sin. The fall of man and the consequences of sin. So in Genesis chapter 3, we see the introduction of sin. And the narrative of the fall in this particular chapter introduces sin into the world through humanity's disobedience. The serpent's temptation and the subsequent eating of the forbidden fruit illustrate the desire and the consequences of rebelling against God's command. The fall narrative, ladies and gentlemen, illustrates the devastating effects of sin, highlighting humanity's disobedience and its catastrophic impact on the created order. What was the immediate consequence of what Adam and Eve did in Genesis chapter 3? The immediate repercussion of sin included shame, fear, and a broken relationship between human and the divine, and between each other. The curse pronounced by God affected all aspects of the creation, introducing pain, toil, and mortality. Walter Brueggemann comments, and I quote, "The consequences of the fall are far-reaching, affecting every aspect of human existence and creation itself, underscoring the gravity of sin." Underscoring the gravity of sin. And this leads us to the next theme that we also see in the same chapter, theme number 3 in chapter 3, that is the promise of redemption. So, ladies and gentlemen, despite the sovereignty of the fall, God's promise of redemption is embedded in the curse on the serpent, hinting at a future victory over evil. That is Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. This proto-evangelium foreshadows the coming of Christ and the restoration of the creation. The promise embedded in the curse on the serpent foreshadows the ultimate victory over sin and evil through the promised Messiah. Into conclusion, and I want us to look at the theological claims that we see through Moses' perspective. What are the theological claims that we see through Moses' perspective? And number one is human dignity. Human dignity. I'll take you back to Egypt. Back in Egypt, Pharaoh was seen as the image of God. That was the culture in Egypt. Pharaoh was seen as the image of God in the Egyptian culture, representing the divine authority and power. Moses, however, democratizes this concept, asserting that all humans are made in God's image, thereby establishing universal human dignity and value. As Nahum Sarna writes, the democratization of the divine image in humanity underscores the inherent dignity and worth of every person. contrasting with the exclusive divinity claimed by Egyptian royalty. Okay? Number two, authority and responsibility. Authority and responsibility. Just as Pharaoh had dominion over Egypt, ladies and gentlemen, humanity's role as God's image bearer entails authority and responsibility over creation. The mandate calls for responsible stewardship and care for the environment, reflecting God's rule. Our role as human beings in this world is to be stewards of the creation. As we take care of what God has given us, ladies and gentlemen, then that responsibility reflects the divine authority, and it shows that we are representing God in this universe. Number three, rational capacity. Being created in the image of God implies relational aspect, mirroring the relational nature of the Trinity. Humans are created for community and relationship, with the marriage in Genesis chapter 2 symbolizing the intimate union intended by God. Even as Gordon Wenham asserts, the relational nature of the image of God in us points to the intrinsic human capacity for relationships, reflecting the relational nature of the Trinity and the intended harmony in human community. Number four, moral accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, reflecting God's image means embodying his moral attributes. Humanity's fall in Genesis 3 illustrates the breach of this moral accountability, highlighting the need for restoration and ethical living according to God's standard. Bruce Watke explains this, and I quote, "The moral dimension of the image of God implies that humanity is accountable to God for their action, and the fall represents a profound moral failure that necessitates redemption." And number five, and this will be the last one, we see a covenantal relationship. The concept of the image of God, imago Dei in Hebrew, this concept underpins the covenantal relationship between God and humanity. God's covenant throughout the Bible, beginning with Adam and culminating in Christ, reflect his commitment, ladies and gentlemen, to restore and maintain this relationship despite human failure. Bill Arnold notes, and I quote, "The covenant framework of the Bible is rooted in the creation narrative, where the image of God establishes a foundation relationship between God and humanity, which God continually seeks to restore." Therefore, as I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to point out that the creation account in the book of Genesis chapter 1 to 3 has really demonstrated that the creation narrative represents God as the sovereign creator, whose orderly and purposeful work establishes foundational, theological about humanity identity and relationship with God. We have seen the theological themes that appears in these three chapters. We have seen the theme of being created in the image of God. We have seen the dominion mandate theme. And we have also seen the fall and the consequences of the fall that has highlighted the narrative and its enduring significance. And we have come to this conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, that the creation narrative's rich theological insights offer a profound understanding of God's character and purpose. This story invites the believer, it invites you and I to embrace their identity and vocation in God's creation, fostering a deeper appreciation for the divine order and the hope of redemption. God bless you and grace be with you today.